Hello everyone, and welcome to the webinar on an introduction to the military and security and law enforcement suite. I'm John Bale, and I'm going to be your presenter for today. As this title suggests, I'm going to be going through all the contents of the military security and law enforcement suite, and I'm going to present them to you so you get a general idea of how to use them and what's actually inside. Today is actually a special occasion because we're holding this webinar in conjunction with the BFE's annual meeting in Rzeszów, Poland this year. And so I'd like to welcome everyone who's in attendance from there. I'd also like to thank everyone who has purchased and downloaded this recording and listening to it at home at their own leisure. As I already said, I'm John Bale. I'm actually the research manager for the BFE. I do a lot of online instruction as well as in-person workshops. If you've downloaded any other recordings from the BFE or attended online classes, you might actually recognize my voice because I might have met you before. I'm one of the individuals who often works with a lot of the software. I'd have to say 95% of the BFE's suites I've actually had a little bit of a hand in making changes to them. So I'm very familiar with all of this software stuff. In today's presentation, here's a quick outline of what I'll be covering. So there's the introduction of the authors, there's the goals of the suite, we're going to look at the contents of the suite documents, and then we're going to look at the two big components, I call them two big separate components of the military and law enforcement suite. It's the psychophysiological assessment and training, along with an Excel report, and then the second one is the reaction time assessment and training, along with an Excel report. The reason I call these two separate components is because the measures and equipment used between them are actually quite different and really don't overlap at all. So I imagine a lot of users who purchase this will either be interested in one component or the other, and only some of them will actually use both together. The only reason that we have them placed in a single suite is because it was the same team of authors that all worked on this together. A little note before I continue, I often call this suite the Military and Law Enforcement Suite, as opposed to the full name of Military Security and Law Enforcement. That's just because I'm a little bit lazy and I feel like it's such a long name that I've already shortened it down pretty often. Okay, so let's move ahead. An introduction to the authors. Henk Kraaijenhof is one of the first authors, and I'm sure he's not bothered by the fact that I just butchered his name because I've met him enough times. He's a very likable person. He works as a performance consultant for many international athletes who compete at the Olympic or the world level competitions. He's also a technical director of his own company that sells high-tech software in Netherlands. He's published a lot of work on performance, training with athletes, and different protocols, and he's quite well known for that. It doesn't say in this little blurb that I've written out here, but he's also worked with several military groups. He's gotten a little bit of a name for himself for having trained with the Dutch group that recently took back one of the boats that was hijacked by Somali pirates, actually. Yuval Oded is the second author of the suite. He's a clinical psychophysiologist specializing in treatment of extreme stress. He lives in Israel. He's actually worked with a really wide client base. So he's worked with, sort of the average individual with their own little disorders. He's worked with a lot of athletes as well as military and law enforcement individuals. When it comes to the military, he has worked closely with the French Ministry of Defense as well as the Israeli Defense Force. So he really does have experience when it comes to those sort of individuals. The third author is Pedro Teixeira, a familiar face from the BFE. He's a physical therapist, lives in Portugal. He teaches real-world postgraduate electromyography courses there as well. He's a senior instructor, so you might also have heard his voice before, and software developer for the BFE. It's always fun working with Pedro. The goals of the military and law enforcement suite depend on what you're using it for. So if you're using it for the psychophysiological assessment and training, then the goal is to assess and, if necessary, teach regulatory skills for individuals who go through high-stress situations. What we mean by high stress is really sort of the military, security, and law enforcement people in their context, because we realize that it can often be very difficult to relax or keep calm in certain situations that are very demanding of your body and your psyche. As goals for the second component of the suite, the reaction time and assessment training, the goal is a little more simple, where we just want to decrease, essentially improve, the decision speed for successful reaction. So you just want to bring down the time it takes for when a person sees a stimulus and they actually choose to act on it. The suite documents for the suite are quite standard as compared to the other suites. So we've included software manuals on how to use both components. They're actually separated into different files. So there's the reaction time software manual, and then there's the stress assessment and training software manual. We've also included some sample client data so you can do a quick replay to see how all the different sorts of assessments and training sessions work and get an idea of how data is arranged in the Excel report and things like that. We also have quick starts. So it's a second method of initiating a recording session based on what sort of session you might want to initiate. I'll be talking about these quick starts a little more later. For now, I'm going to focus solely on the psychophysiological assessment training component of the suite. So I'm going to go through all of that software, and then only after that will I jump into the reaction time component. So if you're listening to this recording, and you've downloaded it at home, and if you're only interested in the reaction time, please feel free to sort of jump ahead and find that section later on. Now, in terms of biofeedback measurements, we do use the Procom Infinity encoder for collecting all this data. It lets us record from up to 8 sensors all at once, and for the psychophysiological assessment, we take full advantage of that ability. Now, in terms of sensors, we look at 2 respiration sensors simultaneously, one for the abdomen and one for the chest, or thoracic respiration if you call it that too. This photo is just for abdomen. We also look at heart rate as collected by the EKG sensor. We do not use a BVP sensor, so no blood volume pulse for collecting heart rate. It has to be done with the EKG using this suite. In terms of heart rate variability, statistics we derive from that heart rate, we look at the SDRR, so the standard deviation of the R to R waves, as well as we do a spectral analysis. We look at the heart rate rhythms of very low frequency, and high frequency. We examine 2 muscle sensors, or the activity of 2 muscles, the frontalis and the trapezius, throughout the assessment and training. If you, the clinician, feel like you'd rather look at some other sensors, then please feel free to do so. Sorry, if you feel like you want to look at some other sites, please feel free to do so. It's absolutely okay. We also record data for skin conductance, and here's 2 little setups how you can use it, either on the palm or surface with disposable electrode pads or directly on the fingers. And we also look at the peripheral body temperature, but just to let you know that we sort of look at it in the assessment, but we never actually consider training it. It's just a nice little secondary thing where you see whether the person's getting aroused or not. Yuval and Henk like to look at it. It's nice little data, but they really don't care that much about it in the end. Now to actually run through psychophysiological assessment and what's entailed and all that. Now, psychophysiological assessment, its purpose is to monitor the client's physiological changes as we present them with different conditions and stressful activities to see how much they react to stress, or whether they're able to recover from that stress, and things like that. This is very useful because it lets us determine whether the person can stay calm or self-regulate, or whether they just hold in stress and maladaptively don't deal well with it. And although I'm giving you guys a big description of the assessment right now in this webinar, it's important to realize that you should actually also use the software manual if you're trying to record some data. The reason for that is that the software manual gives slightly different directions for what are directly embedded into the assessment. The reason for this is that a few of the activities are based on giving false information to the subject as we run them. So the subject has to think one thing, and you need to be aware of what actually is going to happen. Because, well, some of the activities are based on little white lies, just so we can see how they react to the unknown stressful situation. To initiate an assessment, it's pretty simple. You just open up the Biograph Infinity program. From the main menu, click on that Quick Start button. A new window is going to pop up. You choose your client, or add in a new one if you want to. Then you go to Categories, choose BFE, Military and Law Enforcement. And then you choose the PI, Military and Law Stress Assessments. There's a lot of other possible quick starts, and I'm going to describe each of those in turn as we go on today, but all you want to do is focus on that one for now. The second method of initiating an assessment consists of actually doing so from within the suite documents. So you can jump in a little quick start subfolder in there, and then you have shortcuts for each of the type of sessions as well. And again, you want to choose the top one, the PI, Military and Law Stress Assessment. The actual psychophysiological assessment lasts 17 minutes, and there's 9 activities in the protocol. The The first one is a baseline, and then there are 4 stressful activities followed by 4 recovery periods. I'm going to actually describe each of these in turn in a moment. Remember that there's instructions to proceed at the beginning of each recording step. So those instructions help you along and let you know what you should be telling the client. But be aware again that the software manual does give better instructions because some of these on-screen instructions are intentionally false or incorrect for the idea of sort of surprising the client with what will be happening. Baseline, as I'm sure you all know, just gives the subject a chance to relax, get accustomed to the sensors, as well as gives us a preliminary idea of where the reading's at before being stressed and before getting the chance to recover. The baseline in this psychophysiological assessment is stated to last 3 minutes, but at the end of the 3 minutes we suddenly, and suddenly is in quotation marks because it's all programmed, suddenly add 2 extra minutes. The reason for that is you just let the subject know that we realize you're a little bit stressed and that maybe we're just giving you an extra 2 minutes to relax and get used to the situation. This seems to be a little more important, especially because the subject population tend not to relax easily, and they probably have not been hooked up to these sensors before, so they're going to be a little more weary of the process and a little more stressed up, I guess. Now, the first stressful activity is actually the questions task. The questions task is based on telling the client that you're going to be asking them some questions about their negative performance or conduct or issues that have been brought up by coworkers or superiors. Now, that's what you're telling the subject. In reality, you're just going to make them think you're asking some questions, and you're going to give them some time to ruminate on this and think about it before you actually let them know you're not going to ask any questions. The whole idea is that you warn them what's going to happen, and then so you play up to the fact that you're preparing some information, you're reading over some papers about them, and during that time, the actual recording of the stressful portion of this activity is running. So the person gets a chance to ruminate and think about, oh, what happened, what did I do, what did someone say, and not only at the end of it you say you were just lying and it was fake, and that you don't know anything about that stuff. And then you give them a chance to recover as it goes into the recovery activity. The second stressful activity is math task, really straightforward. You give the person a starting number. They have to keep subtracting another number from that, and they have to state their answer out loud over and over again. So, for example, we'll start with 1,081, subtract, 7 or 8 or 9 or 11 from that, and keep giving the new answer. You obviously have to correct them if they give a false answer because that creates a lot of stressful situation. Also make sure that they're actually doing it properly instead of just randomly guessing. The Stroop test is another straightforward one. You have colored words flashing in front of the subject. The subject has to say the color of the word as quickly as possible and not read the word. And a new set of colored words will keep coming up after shorter and shorter periods. So the correct answer in this example right here would be yellow, blue, red, purple, green. The Stroop test has actually been designed so that the people are most likely going to fail it. The duration that each of these sets of colored words gets shorter and shorter up to a point where it's too short for the average person to be able to do it. And so they're going to flub out, and then they're going to have to sort of catch up and go back on it again, having already failed the task. The audio test is the last stressful activity. And it's really not even an audio test, but that's what you're going to tell the client. Ideally, you just let them know it's an audio test. We want to make sure that you have good, proper hearing, so see if you can hear these different frequencies, and then you put a headset over them so you can hear the sound up near their ears. In reality, the subject's actually going to be exposed to an acoustic startle, which is sort of a burst of pure tone or white noise at high volume, and they're not going to be warned about this. Initially, it starts off as sort of like a flat pure tone, and then suddenly it spikes extremely loud and then goes back to the normal flat noise. The very loud portion lasts for less than a second. The acoustic startle has been studied a lot with PTSD patients and in research, and we know that the acoustic startle elicits a much stronger reaction in a PTSD individual than a normal person, although normal people still react to it. Now, it's not considered cruel or harsh because a strong reaction from a PTSD individual just lasts about 5 minutes, so they'll be just a lot stressed and a lot longer, and you can actually see that all the way into the recovery, so that might suggest whether the person has PTSD or not, in case you're using it with that sort of individual. Again, I was going to let you know that it's best the person wears a headset for the full effect, because just hearing the pure tone coming out of a laptop speakers really isn't that great. This is the recording screen for pretty much all the sections of the assessment, with the exception of the Stroop test, because the Stroop test has colored words flashing instead. At the top, you see a line graph that holds the 2 EMG signals in green and pink. In the middle, there's the line graph for the 2 raw respirations, so the inhalations as it goes up and the exhalations as the lines go down. as well as the EKG heart rate in red, so how the heart rate speeds up and slows down as you breathe in and breathe out. At the very bottom is the skin conductance and temperature, so there's yellow and orange lines. Once you're done recording the psychophysiological assessment, you can actually generate its Excel report, which arranges the data neatly in a way that's easy to read and easy to interpret. Now, generating that Excel report can only be done from review mode. So after recording assessment, you have to jump into review mode, or you can jump into review mode at a later time and still generate the report. It's up to you. Skip that. If artifact rejection needs to be done, then you have to do it in review mode. It's really mostly important if the individual has a lot of EKG artifacts, so where they perhaps tense their muscles and move around oddly and create a blip in the signal like you see down here that's not realistic. Once those are removed, then you can generate the report, and the report's then going to be based on real data as opposed to fake data, and so it's a lot more reliable. A quick little back note is that in review mode you can also do some qualitative analysis of the respiration. You can't do this in the Excel report because we just look at means. So in qualitative, I mean that you can look whether the person's really doing good abdominal breathing over thoracic or chest breathing. So the person's really doing belly breathing as opposed to just breathing with their chest and not getting in enough oxygen. When you're ready to generate the Excel report, all you have to do is go to the little printer icon at the top of the screen, and then you choose the Generate Excel Report, and then the report will pop up. This is obviously based on a requirement that your computer has Microsoft Excel installed. Without Microsoft Excel, you can't have the Excel report appear. The Excel report is actually 2 pages of some simple graphs and then text along the side. See on the left here are the graphs, on the right is the text. As a quick little example at the top, we can see its heart rate, and we can see the mean heart rate for each activity. So we have baseline, and then we have the added baselines of the extra 2 minutes. Then we have the questions task, recovery 1, math task, recovery 2, Stroop Test, recovery 3, audio test, recovery 4. And we can see how the mean heart rate for each of those activities went up and down. On the right side next to the graph is text telling us what sort of norms we're looking for, what would be too high, what would be too low, and what to expect. So when you actually read this report, it's rather easy to come into interpretation because we include that information all in here. It's also really good because if you want to print this out, it conveniently prints onto 2 sheets of paper, you'd even give this back to the subject and they can look it over themselves and understand what's good and what's bad from the descriptions on the side. Apart from heart rate, we also have, the SDRR and the spectral rhythms for the heart rate variabilities in these 2 graphs. Then we have the respiration rate down here. This respiration rate is based on the data measured from the abdominal respiration sensor and not the chest respiration sensor. On the second page, we have the same sort of thing, graphs on the left, info on the right, and so we have skin conductance, the 2 muscle sensors, and then the peripheral body temperature. I think I've already said this, but for data interpretation, all the notes are included on the Excel report. It lets you know, what sort of values we're looking for, what's in normal ranges. Do we see the desired patterns of arousal and relaxation, and we see the correlation between some different sensor modalities, which is especially true for respiration, heart rate variability, and skin conductance and temperature. Self-regulation training. So we can do some self-regulation training if we feel that the psychophysiological assessment indicates, along with a discussion with the client, possibly superiors, that they might have an improper sort of self-regulation response, or that they're holding in stress, and then we feel like we can help them. The suites training aspect groups certain sensors together according to what's useful for training. So we've actually grouped the EMGs and skin conductance together, and the respiration and heart rate variability together. These sensor groupings appear on the training screens, and the training screens are already predefined into groups called quick starts. It sounds a little bit confusing, but it'll make sense in a moment. The screens within the quick start usually go from simpler to more complicated, and there's even an extra quick start for advanced self-regulation, so where we're confident the person is good at staying calm using those modalities. Then we test them by putting them in stressful situations according to those screens. If you want to initiate one of these self-regulation training sessions, it's very simple, just like the assessment to initiate. Go into the Biograph Infinity main menu, go to the quick start at the top right, You have this little window appear, choose your client, choose the category, so BFE, military, and law, and then you choose the correct quick start option. So there's 3 here. So there's the EMGs and skin conductance, respiration, heart rate, and then advanced self-regulation for those who are really good at it. Again, the second method of initiating one of these training sessions would be through the suite documents. You can go into the Quick Start subfolder, and you have those same 3 headings right here. They've already been surrounded with this dashed green line. This is the first screen of the respiration and heart rate variability quick start. It only focuses on respiration. It's meant to be simple. There's a pacer up here in case the person needs to do a breathing pacer to help them learn that slower, relaxed breathing rate. Then you have this bar graph that shows what the respiration rate is at the moment. Ideally, we want to get it down to between the dual thresholds that you set. There's a little green light that lets them know when they're breathing at the correct rate, and then you have these monitoring line graphs in epoch means to see how they're progressing over the session. Within that same quick start are the other 4 screens, and so it goes from easy on the previous screen to a little more difficult. So in the second one, we remove the pacer. They have to do the slow respiration on their own without a cue. The third one, we add in the heart rate so that they can train with this heart rate variability. There's another little pacer in case they're having trouble with that. In the fourth one, patient's gone again. We added some skin conductance to see how well they're doing it on their own while checking for that arousal. And the fifth one, it's EMGs added in as well. So we're looking at essentially all the sensors except for temperature. But like I said before, temperature we care very little about. For the EMG and skin conductance quick starts, there's only 3 screens, and they're all pretty similar. The first one's actually at the bottom left right here. I left it small. Where we look at skin conductance and EMGs. All they have to do is keep the EMGs below the manual thresholds. You can move around. There's a green light that turns on. There's also tone that lets them know when they're doing it well. And the second one is just a feedback animation that moves when the person's correctly relaxed. And the third one, we add in all the sensors again just to see if they can keep those muscles and skin conductance down while maintaining good respiration and all that. For the advanced self-regulation quick start, there's only 2 screens in here, and they're really meant to test an individual's ability to maintain self-regulation. The first screen includes a slideshow video of disturbing images and a distracting soundtrack that we've created. So disturbing images are really law enforcement, military stuff related. And distracting noises is about a 3-minute track, has a lot of sirens or gunshots, explosion noises, actually oddly reminiscent of urban warfare, or at least what you'd see on TV. The second screen is meant for use with a DVD that you have to choose yourself. Henk really likes the idea of using DVDs for that emotional reaction. He chooses videos where it's a lot of sort of family situations where it's a family member dying, and it's really tough for you to stay cold, stone, and serious to that. So what he usually does is he has people watch the video, they have the emotional response, and he has them just sort of self-regulate, relax, go back to normal, and work with that. In the software manual, we describe exactly how to interact with all the on-screen instruments, how to set a breathing pacer, how to move around the threshold, and all things like that. So again, be sure to use the software manual because it explains how to use all of this stuff. That was now the end of the psychophysiological assessment and training aspect of the software I'm going to cover. Now I'm going to be jumping into the reaction time assessment and training component of the software. Again, it's like night and day. These are very different from one another. Now, the one thing they actually do have in common, though, is that we use the Procom Infinity encoder. Apart from that, it's all different. In terms of the reaction time equipment that's needed, you need the TT AV-Sync sensor and its accessories that come with it. Now, the TT AV-Sync is a special little box that lets us accurately measure reaction times, and it's accurate to a reaction speed of 0.1 millisecond, which is such a short amount of time that I even have trouble grasping how short that is. The way this works is that it actually plugs into the encoder, it also plugs into your computer, and also there's a little suction cup sensor that's placed directly on the monitor, and it can tell when the stimulus is shown to the person. And so it knows exactly when the stimulus appears, and it knows exactly as soon as the person has the potential chance to react to the stimulus, and then it measures the difference based on that. We also need our 1 or 2 push buttons. Depending on the reaction time protocol, you can use 1 or 2 push buttons, and I'll explain when it's 1 or 2 later on. And the third piece of equipment is actually a second monitor. All reaction time assessment and training protocols need a second monitor. There's no actual choice. It's impossible to actually make with a single monitor. Now, the second monitor doesn't have to be bought from Thought Technology or any of one of its dealers. It just has to be a normal monitor that you plug into your computer and configure. Down here at the bottom is actually a picture of what you'd be seeing with two monitors. So on the left monitor, the stuff in blue with some statistics, that's what the supervising clinician or technician would be seeing. They see the stats come up as the person is going for the assessment or training. And then on the right is the actual stimulus being flashed to them when they have to react or not. Right here is just sort of a mannequin or a person, but otherwise it'd be changing to other pictures. So like I said, actually I don't think I said it yes, but either way, in the reaction time protocols, we have 3 different protocols. Now, the purpose of these protocols is to obviously measure how quickly a subject can react to a stimulus. Now, it's important to remember that we're not training the individual's technique or method how they react, but we're just training the time it takes for them to make the decision to react. So just when they see the stimulus and they decide they need to react, they click the push button. We're not training for how they shoot a person and where they aim and things like that. It's just the decision time. It's also important to note that in these protocols, we're not only measuring how quickly they react. We also measure their ability to not react, essentially to discriminate whether they are supposed to react or not. There are some stimulus which are just sort of dud images. They're not supposed to react to them. So some they're supposed to react as quickly as possible, but they're supposed to be able to choose as quickly as possible not to react to certain images. Like with psychophysiological assessment and training, initiating a reaction time assessment or training session is almost the same. Main menu, go to the quick start, new window will appear, choose your client, choose the category of BFE, military and law enforcement, and then you choose the reaction time protocol. Now, there's 9 options right here, and I'm going to explain each of them, so don't worry about it. Just remember that there's 3 main protocol types. The second method of initiating an assessment or training session is also from within the suite documents, and you just go to the quick start subfolder, and then you choose the desired option. They're all actually written right here, RT basic, so reaction time basic. You just choose one of those. Now, the 3 types of protocols, the first is single. Single is the simplest. The individual is given one push button, and then on screen, the exact same stimulus picture is going to be presented every 1.5 to 3 seconds. The computer randomizes in between this time when it appears. The subject needs to always react to the stimulus. So as soon as they see the picture, they need to click the push button. And they need to do that as fast as possible, and they're always going to have to react. That's the first type of protocol, called single. The second type of protocol, called variable, which I much prefer, is where the individual is again given one push button. The individual is now going to be shown 2 stimuli images. They're going to be presented interchangeably, so it's going to be one or the other. And they're presented every 1.5 to 3 seconds, randomized within that. And they're going to be presented at an overall ratio of 1 to 1. So it doesn't mean that whenever you see the first one, you're automatically going to see the second one next. It means that over 10 minutes, it's going to be about 50% one, 50% other. One of these stimulus is the target, and when that stimulus appears, the person needs to click the push button as quickly as possible to react. The other stimulus is called the non-target, and when that picture appears, they need to not click the push button. So in this example down here at the bottom left, target is the one with the gun, non-target is the one without the gun, and they need to be able to react as quickly as possible to this one with the gun and not react at all to the non-target, the one without the gun. The third type of reaction time protocol is called choice. In this, the individual is actually given 2 push buttons in their hands. One push button is for the left hand, the other push button is for the right hand. Again, there's going to be 2 stimuli presented to the person, and they're going to be presented interchangeably every 1.5 to 3 seconds at a ratio of about 1 to 1. Now, one of the stimulus pictures represents the left push button, and so whenever that stimulus is presented, the individual needs to click the left push button as quickly as possible. The second stimulus represents the right push button, and whenever that stimulus is presented, the person needs to click the right push button as quickly as possible. The individual needs to avoid clicking the incorrect push button for the incorrect stimulus. So here's an example of the stimulus pictures that you might be presented. So we have this image that represents the left push button. So you see there's, I guess, sort of a hostage in gray, and then there's the bad guy in black hiding behind. Then there's the right stimulus push button image. So again, the hostage, but this time there's the bad guy just hidden behind the person on the right side. Now, this might get a little complicated, but I assure you it's not as bad as it seems. Within the 3 protocol types, there's also 3 variations. So that's why there's 9 little choices right here. So the first protocol is single. Second is variable. And third is choice. And within each of those protocols, you have 3 little options. Now, or 3 variations, should I say. Now, 2 of the variations are meant for assessment, although they can actually also be used for training because it really works quite well. And then the third variation is meant strictly for training. And this is true of each protocol. Now, the difference between the 2 assessment options is really just the stim pictures that are used, the stimulus pictures. And then in the training, it's also stimulus pictures, but there's a little bit of additional stuff, which I'm going to explain in a moment. The training variation for those protocols includes immediate feedback of the individual's reaction. For the assessment component, there is no immediate feedback. They only find out at the end. So right here's an example of a training session. When the person needs to click a push button, they're going to, depending on how quickly they push it, a bunch of green lights are going to appear. If they click the push button very quickly, so very short reaction time, then many of the green lights will appear. If they click the push button very slowly, so there's a long reaction time, only a few of the green lights will appear. If they also click the push button at the wrong time, or if there's 2 push buttons, or they click the push button for the wrong image, there's going to be a red light and a burp burp noise to let them know they made a mistake. I think also if they're extremely quick, should I say, and quick is defined by just a clinician on a little bar graph on the other side, they can get a sort of a clapping, yay! They reacted extremely fast, and that was good. Here's some examples of the different stimuli that are going to be shown in some of the protocols, depending on the type of protocol. Personal favorite is this one, hand holding a grenade, hand holding a Coke bottle or something like that. Here's a standard recording screen for actually the variable protocol. What I really want you to get out of this is just the sort of stats that we display. The protocol types are not so important. So right here in the main screen we have the reaction time, the most recent reaction time the person had, and then we have this sort of reaction time mean, standard deviation, min, max, as it keeps running. We have a record of how many stimuli have been shown. In this example, since it's variable, we have the target counter, so when the person is supposed to react, and the non-target counter, so when the person is not supposed to react. And then we have the results of when they correctly discern the difference and when they click the push button correctly or make a mistake. There's always a question, and this is included in the software manual, this explanation, but there's always a question about what certain statistics mean. So errors of commission refer to when the person clicks the push button when they should not have. So let's say the stimulus where the person is not supposed to react appears. They click the push button. That is an error of commission. Errors of omission are when they forget to click the push button. So the stimulus appears where the person is supposed to react and they do not. That is an error of omission. Sensitivity is the percentage of the time that the subject correctly clicks the push button when they should click the push button. Specificity is the percentage of the time when the subject correctly does not click the push button when they should not click the push button. So when images are shown that they're not supposed to react to. This is another little example of the typical recording screen as seen by the supervising clinician. And this one is a choice protocol. It has the same sort of statistics as we just saw a moment ago, but since this involves 2 push buttons, you can see on the left the green text is for the left push button, and on the right is the blue text is for the right push button. And we have the same sort of stats in the middle. All the reaction time assessment and training sessions also come with an Excel report. It makes it really easy to sort of read and look over the information, print out, even give a copy to the subject again. So like with the psychophysiological assessment, you have to go into review mode to generate this. So once in review mode, I mean, you can look around at the review statistics, but it's not particularly useful. At least I don't think so. And so you just go to the little printer icon on the top, choose Generate Excel Report. Remember, you need to have Microsoft Excel to generate this report, and then you're going to have the report appear. This is an example for the single type of protocol where the person is always supposed to react to the stimulus. So it's very simple. There's a pie chart showing how many times they successfully react, which is pretty easy because they're always supposed to react. and then the reaction times for all that stuff. Here's the variable reports where they have one push button and then reacting to a target and a non-target stim. We have the pie charts for those two different reactions as well as the general average. And then this is for the choice assessment where two push buttons and all the associated statistics to either of those push buttons. Now you can easily print this out, and you can include the person's name, session date, and they can keep a copy of this so they can see how they did, maybe even compare to other sessions. This actually brings us to the end of my webinar. So with that, I'd like to thank everyone who attended today, as well as users who listened to the downloaded recording. As a quick reminder, if any of you have any questions, you can feel free to send them to the BFE via this email address right here. So email redmilitarysecurity@gmail.com. It's all written as one word. We'll gladly answer any of your questions if you have any. And I guess that's it for that. So on behalf of myself, John Bale, and the BFE, thank you very much for attending. Bye-bye.